So the journey is basically about this. This was an initiative by a tweeter. I redacted the name because it's a private person who has simply brought about an initiative, simple initiative, saying, how about if we, now that the terror attack had started and people are fleeing and not being able to find a secure place, why don't we open up our doors and give refuge to those who may need it at the moment of fear, at the moment of anxiety? And so this was a pure single initiative from a person who had really no massive following, who had no massive influence, in fact, a youngster. And so the end result was remarkable, to say the least. The first thing that you'll notice that the tweet had been retweeted almost 1,000 times, and also likes are over 1,000. And so just to make sure, I like the fact that she brought the same message also in English. So it's like an understanding that some people might not get the message in Swedish. So she also had the same tweet in English at the bottom. She says, everyone in Stockholm that is either willing to open up their home or need a safe place during the current events, please use Open Stockholm. So this is the journey of Open Stockholm, a hashtag that inspired a nation at a time of fear. So the idea that I had in mind is to analyze what happened with this hashtag. So this is a tool I created. I'm also a software developer alongside being a researcher. So I developed a tool to help analyze hashtags and Twitter data. What I found through this tool, which you can learn about at your convenience, which is called Micodify, that there were over 40,000 tweets. Those were original tweets in those first 5 days after the hashtag was released. And they resulted in over 86,000 retweets, including retweets. And that also meant there would be a significant, let's say, impact in the first 10 hours, because as it is a very crucially relevant to your time, that you have to get it as soon as possible. So it was normal to see that the big chunk of these tweets had been released very quickly in the first few hours. And then it actually, the distribution of the tweet was also broad. It wasn't a few thousand people. It was well over 26,000 tweeters. And that was mainly in Stockholm through the bio, but I'd say the number is well over 6,000, but this is the information I was able to assert using the bio information of the individual tweeters, because many tweeters don't actually have the location in their bio. Additionally, this was also targeting the local audience, so it was more than 50% in Swedish. That was also important to note. And another important thing is that majority were using mobile devices. So they were on the run. Either they were trying to give refuge or they were trying to seek refuge. And these are some of the main hashtags that had been associated with this. With Open Stockholm, you'll notice words like unity, pray for Sweden, pray for Stockholm, we are not afraid, Sweden as the hashtag. And so many of the positive themes have emerged from these hashtags, reflecting on some sort of wide unity and important recognition that we need to be peaceful and calm and not engage in any attacks or any counterattacks. And we are Swedes. And these are examples of what you can find in a situation where people are aware of how important the message needs to be and how it might reflect on the spirit of the people reading on social media. Mind you, this is all made by the public, so these are pure, genuine reactions by the mainstream. Another interesting finding was that by the minute, the number of people who used the hashtag had increased rather remarkably. You notice that this is within about a couple of hours, an hour and a half, after the first tweet was released. You'll notice there are several heaps and jumps, such as the one after 1450. And that indicates that there are certain people within the Twitter community that had high followers that used the hashtag to promote it even further. So we find a leap in the number of users and another leap, and et cetera, et cetera. And so this is a reflection that there was an embrace of this hashtag by several people. Note that these are in GMT, so you need to be aware of that 2 hours difference. So this is the idea of these are the quantitative data, but I'd like to give you a visual of what could have happened. I mean, what happened in the form of a network formation. It's like what I call a viral effect. So the initiative was basically this. This was 1 minute later. In the same minute, all those people had communicated with the original source, saying, okay, we have now an awareness of this, and we use the hashtag, and we respond back. And the way that this works is that at the center is the person who originated the message, who put up the open Stockholm, and at the edges, you know, at the very end of these lines are the people who repeated the message and communicated back to the person who originated the message. So this is the interaction that's going on between two individuals. So once the first minute has passed, 5 minutes later, a new branch had emerged. Now the originator had shifted a little bit to the left, so there's more discussion happening among others. Not only is it the originator, but also someone else. And that's just in 5 minutes. 10 minutes emerged. Now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, I can tell about 5 or 6 different centers of communication, all talking about Open Stockholm. No longer is it only the initiator, but there are other groups emerging. 15 minutes, suddenly you find an expansion of the network. You find that there are so many that you can rarely, very difficult, it might be difficult to count the different centers here, but you can still see that there's a biggest center that started at the left, and that's where the message was originated. Then there are smaller centers that have their own smaller communities, and there are several that are still starting to emerge. But what the surprise is here, actually. Suddenly a bloom, a blossom of the network. Now, no longer is the originator of the network, of the hashtag, in control. The message has now resonated, and the hashtag has moved on, and it created many more branches, some branches quite far away, so it might take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 bridges until you arrive to the end node from the original node. And then the end of the day is this. It's no longer possible to know who's who. It's quite a vast network. But I'd like to tell you something very important as we move on. This expansion is number one, it's a testament to the way Twitter is built. Twitter as an open platform where everyone has an opportunity to present an idea. No matter how small you might be at the beginning, your idea might resonate very quickly. And let alone having something like this, which is within 10 minutes, 10 hours, or 5 minutes, or 30 minutes. I mean, your idea has ended up reaching people all the way around the world. Your hashtag has been used in many countries. And it ends up pointing to one direction, which is that even if you start something, you're not able to control it. And this is the bottom line. You will find that throughout the research that we've done here, and obviously I'd like to give a shout out to Professor Christensen, who's been working with me on this. Unfortunately, he couldn't come today because of illness. And so he and I had worked on this, and we came up to the conclusion that this animated, let's say, this animation or expansion of this network leads to the 2 or 3 facts. One fact is that it's possible to expand regardless of where you are or who you are. The other fact is that it expands based on the event's, let's say, dynamics. The event was very heated, and it's extremely relevant in terms of time. And the third fact is that when it spreads, it's not anymore possible to know where it will go next. And where it went next might surprise you. And this is where I'd like to identify the 3 stages. The first stage is basically the practical stage where people actually use the hashtag for its intended purpose, which is to find people, to reach out to people, to get to know. For example, this is a person who asked for a place for his family, and people who responded to that are there as well. and so they have explained where they will be. I redacted the names of these individuals. And again, this is another example of people who are communicating back and saying, okay, this is how we can help you, or this is where I need help. And then some companies also opened their doors, such as Sony Music here, opened their doors for, and this is just one example on top of what I got from the data. Stockholm Stad is a very popular account here, and it allowed people to come into the arenas and venues of the Stockholm Stad. And so this is also something that's been reported also by the media. Some people even ended up getting something like pizzas. Not only is it going to give refuge, I'll also provide you with something to use during that time. So that's the intended purpose. I would say that the originator would love to see this. Another thing that happened is this. It's symbolism. No longer is the hashtag used only for the actual practical needs of the people. It's now used to express an opinion. And this opinion emerged with people saying, okay, we are Swedes, we are not afraid. And this is a criticism of the people who are trying to create hatred and bring in animosity in the community. Another is simply saying thank you to the police and thanks for helping out in making sure that everyone is safe. And this is also quite a popular footballer and who has expressed very strong support for this hashtag. This is a simple picture. It illustrates that people will not go home. I mean, it's basically saying that we will not change our lifestyle because of this. And it has nothing to do with the original intention of the hashtag, because it was more practical. But this is, again, a symbolism that would reflect on why it's important to maintain these values. This is a beautiful image, in my opinion. It shows that this is how you react to violence, and the image of the car reflecting on the hugs. And then this moves on. This is as we progress and people come out a couple of days later to the main stadium and express solidarity and peace. Oh, again, this is not about opening your doors. It's opening perhaps your heart. It's opening for your values, opening your values. And this is the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and saying that how she was extremely grateful for what happened. And so, as you see, this is not the same thing that was originated for. I mean, they're not the same goal, but it's still a very positive goal. But then again, we come to something else. This is one of the unintended consequences of an open platform. And this is what I call the backlash. And backlash, you can call it backlash, you can call it criticism. But it's basically saying that if you have a group of people believing in something, the same hashtag will be used by people who are anti what you believe. And this is, as for example, not one condolence for the lives who were lost, etc. Open Stockholm, you will never see Sweden peaceful again. I'm not surprised not many people retweeted this, but at least you can tell these are some of the opinions. The same thing here, your politicians lied for so long about the Islamist rape, etc., etc. More terror, no doubt, sadly. Again, this is to the Prime Minister. He's explaining that it's your stupidity, etc., etc., and language that is against Muslims, etc. And this is just a reaction to what's going on. And these are simple examples. Some of the more common ones are with illustrations. And this is a sad reality that you have several people who are using the exact same hashtag that the person had intended for good. Now it's being abused and taken over. And this is not the first time it's happened. It's happened before in various events. So, for example, the Charlie Hebdo campaign that had the main hashtag taken over and used for various purposes to promote Islamophobia, promote anti-immigration policies. It was originally intended for something good, but it was taking over. And then something like this, the Stockholms. These are people who have been using this over and over. And you will notice that if you go back to the graph, many of these nodes are people who have these, actually, the nodes, the centers, are people who support this. And obviously, we'll come up with this again about the Trump statement about Sweden. And it will illustrate that people use the hashtag, and I would be as the person who is, if I were to initiate a hashtag and know that this would have taken place, I would be quite upset. But it's a fact that we have to admit when we deal with this data. But the bottom line is that these 3 stages teach us something important. They teach us that people have a will, have the they can take an initiative. No one can control where hashtags flow, but that doesn't mean that people should not strive to do what they're supposed to do in terms of promoting peace and ensuring that hatred is not faced by hatred. And I take this opportunity to highlight one of the tweets, and this is Martin Luther King's quotation saying, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Thank you very much.